You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on iTunes and at facebook.com/DCAU Review. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey, it's episode 3 of the DCAU Review. I'm Cal, and along with me, as always, is my brother, good friend Liam. Liam, welcome back to the DCAU Review.
Thanks for having me again. I love doing this show. I'm very excited to talk about today's episode.
Yeah, man, we're hard to believe we're already on episode 3 of Batman the Animated Series. This week we'll be covering the third episode chronologically of Batman the Animated Series. That, of course, is Nothing to Fear. And Liam, I'm pumped to talk about this episode today. It's awesome. I don't remember watching. I definitely didn't get to watch this episode a lot when we were growing up, due to the Scarecrow being the villain. He was a little scary. Dad and Mom didn't want me watching it and getting nightmares, so I can't remember watching this episode a whole lot. Maybe once or twice when I was real young, and then maybe once or twice when it actually came back out on DVD. But I was actually pleasantly surprised with this episode.
Yeah, to me, it held up so well, and we'll get into the specifics of our categories, but in a minute here. But yeah, it held up in a way that I did not expect. People remember, I think this is the famous, the episode that has the famous Kevin Conroy, maybe the famous line Kevin Conroy ever uttered as Batman. The "I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman."
No, you are not my father. I am not a disgrace. I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
It's on T-shirts. It's a meme to an extent. It's one of the lasting phrases.
Yep.
That has made this show so memorable. It was even brought back and uttered again by Kevin Conroy in the Batman Arkham Knight video game a few years ago. So it's such an iconic line, and
it's Kevin Conroy's signature Batman line.
Right.
Like
it's the thing.
You have your other Batman signatures. I'm Batman. Like, maybe is Christian Bale or.
Yes.
Right, I'm not wearing hockey. I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Right. Yes. This is his signature line, and this is one of the first episodes, as we mentioned in our On Leather Wings episode, where Batman wasn't even necessarily the focal point of that episode. This is the first one of the first episodes where Kevin Conroy is asked to do the lion's share of the sort of the heart and the acting of the episode. And to me, it's one of his most memorable and one of his greatest performances ever.
I would agree. Yeah, I think, as we already discussed, this isn't one. If you had asked me to list my top 10 just off the top of my head, Batman Animated Series episodes, I don't think this would have even maybe crossed my mind to think of one. But this episode, after watching it and really, as we've been doing, just kind of putting it under the microscope to look at it, the plot itself, man, this is really deep stuff for a children's cartoon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we talked about that in the first week with On Leather Wings, that this cartoon, obviously why it transcends and why it's legendary and why it's able to kind of hold up after so many years is because they were able to incorporate adult themes and things that adults could sort of understand and comprehend, and they didn't dumb everything down for the kids that it's marketed towards, which is why this episode, I think, is really, really good. All right, so thanks again for tuning in to the DCAU Review. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. You can follow us at DCAU Review. You can like us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/DCAU Review. And you can also subscribe to us on iTunes. So please, we would love for you to do that. And while you're there, you can give us a 5-star review. We would certainly appreciate that. But in case this is your first episode, if you're just checking us out, we're so glad, and we'd love for you to check out the previous 2 episodes. We did Christmas with the Joker for episode 2, and then episode 1 was On Leather Wings. And Liam, basically, each episode we break it down into 4 categories.
Yes, we have 4 categories, each zero on a scale of 0 to 10. Those 4 categories are plot, music, animation, and the voice acting. Every once in a while, we may throw in some sort of bonus points if there's something that's not covered in those 4 main categories that we really liked. But yes, so for most episodes, it'll be basically a scale of 0 to 40.
All right, so what do you say we start at the plot?
Sounds good to me. I gave the plot a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
It's very simple in some ways. It's a story of revenge. So the Scarecrow was a professor at this college, and he was doing these illegal experiments, and which is sort of the of his fear toxin, which he uses. He gasses everybody in this episode at least once. Thrown out of the university, and so he swears revenge at the. He's a misunderstood genius. He's the mad scientist.
Sure.
So on that side, it's sort of a simple sort of revenge plot. But you have this underlying that once Batman is hit with the fear toxin, and after Batman has a discussion with the head of the college, who happened to go to school with Batman's father, that he's afraid that he's bringing shame to the Wayne name, and that's
deep stuff.
Yeah, and especially if you're at all familiar with Batman, the whole reason and his whole reason is in honor of his parents' death. And so to have the idea of, and that's sort of never changed, it's sort of never been questioned. So the idea that he would, this great, incredible, courageous man would suddenly be plagued with doubt, suddenly be plagued with fear of what if all of this is for nothing? What if they would be ashamed of me? What if I shouldn't be doing this at all? Like that's like imagine any other children's cartoon, especially in the early 1990s, as we mentioned a few times on our last show, like coming from the Super Friends era, the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends types of shows, to have a show that's now questioning the very, his very motivation for putting on this cape and cowl and becoming this creature of the night and that strikes fear into criminals' hearts. And to have him then sort of step back and be plagued with fear and doubt that maybe this was all for nothing. I think that's a real life thing that everybody will go through at some point in their life, wondering if why did I make this choice? Why did I take this job? Why did I start dating this person? Whatever everybody has a moment in their life where they think, what if I made the wrong decision?
And certainly, and we're all concerned about whether or not we want to admit it or not. We're concerned about our parents or whoever our parent figure is in our life. We want them to be proud of us. We want them to, approve of what we've chosen to do and to bring honor to their name, if you will, using the example of this episode. We can all identify with that, whether it's our actual parents, whether it's, mentors in our life, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever it is. There's somebody in our life that we just want at the end of the day to say, I'm proud of you. And when you don't have that, when that person isn't there anymore and your motivation for doing something is that person, as is in the case in Batman, his motivation for being Batman, like you said, is to avenge his parents' death, is to fight crime, is to do stuff so that there aren't other parents of children to do that. And in doing so, he wants to bring, he wants his parents, he would want his parents to be proud of him. So for him to have doubt and for the Scarecrow's fear toxin to play on that is, man, that's so deep for this child's cartoon.
Absolutely. Give that a 7 out of 10. So I just what was your score?
I also gave it a 7 out of 10. I think the things that we hit on in your points are very valid. I think it probably would have been higher if it wasn't. There was a couple of plot holes that I felt, again, maybe I'm nitpicking here. How did the Scarecrow get a blimp?
And like a Wright brothers plane inside that blimp?
Right. Right. How does this happen? He's not a billionaire. He also flew a helicopter in the first scene.
That's
Like,
right.
he owns a helicopter and a blimp. Like, he
He
stole a blimp.
established that well, it's established also in the first scene that they aren't robbing banks. He does take some money, but he says it's not about money. It's about, burning the school down. So
Right.
it's established that he isn't necessarily a super wealthy man. And there is a
Agreed.
little bit of a Deus Ex Machina ending where Batman gets analyzes part of Scarecrow's mask that he tore from his costume and realizes that the material was made was made by one of 5 companies, and one of
Star
the
Labs with a cameo, by the
yeah,
way, which I never caught before.
me either. A nice little early Star Labs obviously became a very big part of the DCAU, especially when we got into Superman. But and one of them happens to be a Crane Chemicals, so it seems a little bit like, oh, it just so happens that, which happens to be owned by the professor who was recently fired by the university. So, and it's 22 minutes. They didn't
Right.
maybe have they didn't have 10 minutes to spare where he's painstakingly analyzing crime scenes and stuff like that. But
Sure.
he didn't have those magic goggles and spray that he had.
Yeah, where were those? That would have helped a lot.
Right.
Made this go a lot quicker if that was the case. Yeah, I think so much, just like in the case of On the Leather Wings, so much of the time was spent on the storyline, not necessarily. It was more about this episode, despite having the Scarecrow in it and having that whole he's getting revenge and stuff. That's almost the B story of the episode. The A story of the episode, if you will, is Batman fighting this fear of disappointing his father. Like, that's the only thing that matters in this episode. Everything else was just kind of like, okay, well, there's some motivation for this. The thing that I didn't get, or I kind of left my head scratching, was Scarecrow didn't get fired. It doesn't ever say specifically that he got fired by the college, only that Dr. Long called him stupid or an idiot or something. Like, he doesn't, I mean, it shows him before this review board, which I guess is supposed to, intimate that he got let go or whatever by the college, but he doesn't say, oh, Dr. Long is responsible for me getting fired or losing my dream job or keeping me from being able to perform these experiments. It's like, he called me an idiot or called me stupid. Like, okay. So he called you stupid, and you're just that crazy, which I guess that lines up more with the character. He's just so crazy that, he's not afraid to experiment on people with fear toxin. So he's also not crazy enough, or not too crazy to not exact revenge because he was called stupid. I guess.
I guess that idea is, it's one thing if you fire me or you make me, you call me a lunatic, but how dare you question my intelligence?
Yeah.
That's almost more of a Riddler motivation, I think, which we'll get to
I would
down
agree.
the lines. It's definitely, like I said, it's very much a paint by the numbers. Mad scientist wronged by his former institution. Now he swears revenge.
Yeah. So I gave it a 7 out of 10. Also, one other plot point that I just had to point out that was very interesting, especially, being so fresh in my mind with the On Leather Wings episode, is Batman comes out of the safe in the very first scene where he has an interaction with Scarecrow, and he's been hit by this fear toxin, and there's a fire that starts, and the fire goes out, and the police get there, and the police don't try to arrest Batman. They just have a conversation with him. Was there a plot point that I missed in On Leather Wings where Commissioner Gordon told Bullock to stop trying to arrest Batman? Or am I just to assume that these cops didn't want to arrest Batman and now he's friends? Even Bullock didn't. I mean, he got snarky with him, but he didn't try to arrest him.
I think the idea is once the police saw that there was another bat creature besides Batman, then they no longer thought Batman was responsible.
Okay.
But you're right that there was never an official declaration of, I'm disbanding your task force or anything like that.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree. There's actually one more plot hole that I wanted to talk about too. Not plot hole, but a plot point that I thought was interesting. It's very subtle, and actually, your boy Alfred in this episode plays a very small role. And I actually, when we talk about the voice acting, I was going to hit on this, but not as distracting in this episode. I thought he was okay. His performance in this, your boy Clive Bowen was or whatever his name is. Earl Bowen, that's right. Earl Bowen did a better job in this episode. But there's a cool little kind of scene where he talks to Alfred about how, he mentions that he's kind of worried about whether or not his motivation for doing this it would make his parents proud or make his father proud. And Alfred puts his arm around him and he says, how I know that he would be proud, and how I know he'd be proud because I'm proud of you. So it kind of gives this cool introduction. We didn't build much depth for Alfred in the first couple episodes. He's just kind of a background character that happens to be there. But in this episode, it kind of lays that foundation for Alfred to be really a supporting character for Bruce and to really help balance him out and to sort of bring the Bruce Wayne, the human part of him, as he so often is portrayed in, whether it's in comics, whether it's in the movies. But his goal his role is to make sure that the Bruce part isn't lost in Batman.
We mentioned this a little bit last week when we talked about Robin and sort of his role to be the lighter side, to be the jokier side sometimes. And yes, Alfred's role is to kind of help Batman look on the bright side a little bit, I think. Mm-hmm. And yes, the way that line of "I know your father would be proud of you because I'm proud of you," and that's that he is he's the grandfather of the Bat family. He's right. Alfred is the guy who's, again, we talked about needing approval or wanting approval from paternal figures or from parental figures, and Alfred's sort of the one there reassuring him, which in turn gives Batman the strength to sort of snap himself out of the fear-induced hallucinations a bit later in the episode. And yeah, I would say this was the peak of Earl Bowen's Alfred. But also because in the first few episodes he's very droll, and again he's there basically just to make sort of a snotty British quip and then walk away. And this episode he gets to act a little bit and show some emotion and talk some sense into Bruce and be the guy who almost literally picks him up when he's down.
Yep.
But he's still the butler and he's still a parent. So he's like, well, okay, we're gonna get you some soup and you're gonna go to bed. Like, that was awesome. That was awesome. That was very nice. And again, it took 30 seconds, but you immediately understand what this man's role is in Batman, in yep. helping Bruce Wayne and Batman be who they are, and what his role is, and how many, almost literally Batman has somebody to lean on. If everybody else is down on him, if everybody else has abandoned him, Alfred's always going to be there to pick him back up.
Certainly. All right. We'll move on and drive by plot hole. Giant Zeppelin crashes into building, killing thousands. Yes. We'll move on to voice.
Both of the Scarecrow thugs that are with him, they just fall out of the blimp. Batman doesn't make a single attempt to try to save them.
But they conveniently landed in a tree.
One of them landed on an awning. Fell like 3 stories and landed on an awning and bounced off and hit the ground. And the other
probably
one,
dead.
And then the one just landed in a tree. So.
Well, again, they had the FCC issue of being able to show death in a children's cartoon, so they chose to just leave it kind of open ended. Did he die by being impaled by a branch in that tree? Possibly. Did he bounce off of that awning and then launch back up into the sky and fall on his neck and break it? Probably. But they couldn't show the actual death.
Right.
All right. So voice acting. We talked a little bit about your boy, Mr. Bowen, already. What'd you think of the voice acting?
Yeah, I gave it a 9 out of 10. I thought everybody's performance, like I mentioned earlier,
nice.
This was quite literally the Kevin Conroy show. It was he was asked to basically carry all of the emotional and the big beats of the story.
Does he do his own father's voice in this episode? It was hard to tell.
Yeah, it felt to me it sounded like the voice of the back computer was doing. But yes, in future episodes, specifically, I can think of "Perchance to Dream" down the road. Kevin Conroy voices Thomas Wayne as well. But yeah, I mean, he was asked to do a lot here, and again, this is very early on in the production of these episodes. He's still sort of finding his voice and literally finding his voice, and he just knocks it out of the park. And like I said, beyond that, the classic line that we brought up earlier, you could give that line to a lot of people, and it would sound really hokey.
Yeah.
Or it would sound, or something that you could see in like maybe a 1970s, like Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams Batman comic.
Right.
Maybe, and you look at it with 2017 eyes and you go, okay, that's a little silly. I am the Knight.
Right.
But then you listen to that man say those words and you're like, hell yeah, he's the Knight. Hell yeah, he's vengeance. Like that's
right.
He's Kevin Conroy is amazing in this episode. And so he gets most of the credit for the high score of 9 for the voice acting. But as we mentioned, I thought Alfred was the best he's been as far as this original voice goes. And the Jonathan Crane Scarecrow voice is again very mad scientist. Is got a sort of the British accent, and he's very holier than thou, constantly insulting his two thugs, and calls one of them like a dropout, which made me laugh. And like the lighter moments in this story mostly come from Scarecrow interacting with his two thugs, who are just these kind of big dumb glutes.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, the lion's share of the credit for my high score of 9 here on this voice acting has got to be for Kevin Conroy's performance. What did you think?
I gave it a 7 out of 10 myself. I would agree with you completely. Kevin Conroy steals the show in this episode. This is the first episode we actually get to see, like you said, his acting chops. So I that line in and of itself is worth several points, and the fact he was able to deliver it. I thought there's a brief interaction that we talked about between Bullock and Batman that I thought was really good, because it again shows a little bit of depth. It's a 30-second, maybe less, 15-second conversation between Bullock and Batman, but shows the animosity that Bullock still has for Batman. He doesn't care for him. It's delivered perfectly. Now, there's a little bit of repartee back and forth. He talks about police evidence that he should drop and stuff. Really, really good. I actually thought the weakest part of this episode, and maybe it's because I have the benefit of comparing it to the later incarnation of Scarecrow, was the Scarecrow voice. This character is supposed to, in my mind, the Scarecrow's the only thing that he has over any of Batman's other rogues is this ability to strike fear, and obviously some of it is aided by whatever chemical concoction he's created to in the fear gas. But he himself should be frightening, and in this episode, I couldn't help but look at him and see, like, he's real gangly. He's got he's got a bag. It looks like a dude with a bag on his head. The character I wasn't. Anyway, and the voice of itself just kind of added to it felt super over the top for me, super cartoon. It just felt like I'm a superhero cartoon villain, so I have to be over the top.
It's very Skeletor or Cobra,
right?
Cobra Commander style. I'm evil.
Yeah, it's. Right, he's, and I get it. I think what you said. He's a mad scientist. So they told the guy that was doing, Henry Pollock II, who did Scarecrow's voice in both this episode and later Batman the Animated Series episodes. But when you compare it, like I said, when I compare that to the voice that was used later on in Batman, the new Batman Adventures, it's night and day to me. Like it's not scary, it's not creepy. It's just a dude with a bag on his head. There's nothing scary about that. So that brought it down just a little notch. But I actually did like, he had one really good line that I thought he delivered really well. And he was like, "What hidden terror keeps the Batman awake at night?"
What hidden terror keeps the Batman awake at night?
Yeah. And then that actually was really, really good. I appreciated the way that he delivered that line. That's a great little soundbite from him. But again, the rest of it, the performance, I thought was a little over the top. So I gave 7 out of 10 on that.
Fair enough.
Let's move on to animation. What'd you think of the animation in this episode?
Animation, I gave 8 out of 10 here. To me, this is one of the strong. There's a little bit of wonkier parts in the first act. Mm-hmm. Sort of when Batman's first sort of confronting the Scarecrow. But for the most part, a lot of that comes from probably the last 5 to 10 minutes of the episode when he's hanging off the blimp. I'm going to talk a lot about just the motions of Batman's cape. Really making you feel like he's hanging or swinging through the city at, he's however many.
You're a big cape guy. We established that on Leather Wings. You're a big cape animation guy.
And that maybe goes to the talk of just how painstaking the animation process can be. But they put in so much work to make him look great. And I also think the final shot of the episode is Bruce Wayne laying flowers at his parents' grave, and he's walking away, and he has sunglasses on and a big black overcoat, and the coat's blowing in the wind, his hair is blowing in the wind. Like, I thought this episode was a lot of the fear hallucinations that various characters have in this episode. When Thomas Wayne first appears in the flames, when Batman transforms into like a literal gargoyle or a literal demon, when the Scarecrow has been given a taste of his own medicine, that to me is so phenomenally done. What did you give it?
I gave it a 7 out of 10, actually. I would agree with you. It's funny, you were talking about that scene where he lays the flowers. Like, I was getting goosebumps just thinking about that scene. The music adds a whole bunch to that. It's really awesome, too. We'll talk about that in a second. But I thought that it was way better, yards and miles ahead of Christmas with the Joker, and obviously just watching that one to compare the two of those, this one looks way, way, way better. There's a scene at the very beginning where Bruce is in an elevator with Dr. Long, and Dr. Long, tells him that he's bringing shame to the Wayne name, and he's sitting there and he's looking out over the city, and you see his reflection in the glass. Super cool, that's super cool detail that would have been easy just to kind of fill in the background with like a painted background, not have the reflection there, but just a little cool detail like that. Like you already mentioned, the fire hallucination, seeing the fire kind of work into a face, and then Thomas Wayne's face to come out of it. The scene where Dr. Long's hands kind of morph into skeletons was really good. And these were all things that could have been sort of like we talked about last time. And I think some of it they did. In the scene where everybody gets attacked with the fear gas, the escape scene where he kidnaps Dr. Long, they could have just gone, oh, it's so scary, or, oh, there's spiders on me, and I can't see them, but they went through it kind of giving you that didn't go with a bird's eye view. They kind of went with the first person view so that you could kind of see what they were experiencing, which was cool. And then where he's hanging from the front of the Zeppelin or the blimp, and the Thomas Wayne's face appears, and then he turns into this freaky looking skeleton thing, just super cool. And then I agreed with you also. I had written down the Batman being in the shadows. This is kind of the first episode that you get to see what would become the epitome of Batman drawing, or what you think of when you think of Bruce Timm Batman drawings, just the white eyes in the dark, a little bit of blue maybe to show you his silhouette, but just the eyes in the darkness. And then he comes out of the shadows and he sprays Crane with his own fear gas, turns into this gigantic demon gargoyle thing. Just really, really cool. And it's funny that in Batman, obviously in Batman Begins, they sort of do something similar to that transformation, where Jonathan Crane gets sprayed with his own fear gas, and Batman turns into this monster gargoyle, demon type looking Batman thing. So it's cool to see that also translated into actual live action Batman movies later on.
Yeah, and one other thing I just wanted to mention is at the very end we mentioned he lays the flowers on his parents' grave and he walks away, and the shadow he casts has
Ah,
Batman. It's Bruce Wayne walking away, but you see the bat ears in his shadow, and that's a really cool little visual thing. And I've seen other comic book artists do it, but
mhm.
this was the first time I remember seeing it ever in animation.
Yeah, I missed that one completely. But I think that's one that they call back to. There's definitely a callback to or two later in the series that they do that too. I think on in the Gray Ghost episode, there's a scene at the very end where that's the same thing happens. So that's really cool. I didn't even recognize that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's again just a little some of those little minor touches really again it's that little bit of extra effort that I think will separate, our favorite episodes from our least favorite episodes in all of these series we're going to review.
All right, moving on to our final category, we got music. I thought that from the very beginning, from the title card, that first of all, the title cards, we could do our own extra bonus points for the title cards. I thought the title card for this episode definitely would add a point or two. You know what? Why don't I do that? I'm going to make this a bonus point episode.
All right.
I'm going to add this I'm going to give an extra bonus point on just for the title card itself. We'll post it with the actual episode here, but it is a scarecrow. It's light. The light source is coming from behind and shining through it, and just creepy as all get out. And it's got the words "nothing to fear" written on it. Immediately, that as a child, that scared the pants off of me. Like nothing to fear. Okay, but there's this giant creepy scarecrow standing there, and then they bring in the music accompaniment with it. Man, so good. I gave the music for this episode 8 out of 10. The immediate strings that come in right at the beginning and lead to this sort of theme that follows Scarecrow around, and it's actually the theme that also sort of follows Batman around as he's affected by the fear gas. So good. That theme kind of comes in every time Thomas Wayne shows up. He gives his, and then the music that comes, it kind of morphs into the Batman theme after he delivers his "I am the Night, I am Batman" line, and he swings through the glass of the blimp. Just so good the way they moved it in together. And then you already touched on the actual scene itself, but I thought the music at the very end where he's laying the roses on the grave, like, man, just like literally now just thinking about that scene, I have goosebumps because I can hear the theme in my head, and you just get he's finally realizes that, yes, you know what, this whole time I've been doubting this, whether or not this making my parents proud or not. And you know what? By defeating this fear and realizing that I'm doing something good, and that's all that my dad would want me to do is something good, I'm doing that. And he lays the roses down there, and the music's playing, and the wind's blowing. It's just great.
Yeah.
So I gave music 8 out of 10 for this. How about you?
I went 10 out of 10 on this.
Nice.
This to me,
our first perfect score.
Yeah, no, this is just outstanding. I mean, you mentioned the way the themes sort of interlocked and sort of laid on top of each other, and the very eerie feeling when the main Scarecrow theme plays to the sort of the Batman's fear music, and then following that into sort of the more classic Batman theme. It was just an amazing job. And again, something that just wasn't happening a lot in especially in children's cartoons was to have a live orchestra
Sure.
Recording for every episode, and they did such a phenomenal job, and every scene makes you feel the emotion that the character's feeling. When Batman is down, the music is very, it's very low and dour, and when he triumphs, when he realizes, thanks to Alfred and thanks to him overcoming his demons, and he's ready to go fight Scarecrow, fight the bad guys, and the Batman theme swells. It feels very triumphant. You're like, all right, all right. He faced some adversity, he got over it, and now it's time to kick some butt. Like you
Right.
feel that. And again,
Yeah.
and the theme at the end, the music playing at the end when he lays the flowers at his parents' grave it's somber in a way because it is still his, he'll never truly get over the losing his parents, but there's a twinge of hope to it that
Yeah.
he is a hero. He is bringing honor to them, as you mentioned. And to me, just the best parts of this are that the best episodes I think are when you feel like the main characters are different or better off or have changed because of this episode. With
Right.
Christopher the Joker or on Leather Wings for that matter, it doesn't really feel like Batman doesn't really go through any kind of personal struggle or
Right.
personal demons or really have to overcome anything besides a physical threat. Whereas here he's dealing very much with an emotional threat, and you feel that he's come out a stronger person, a better person, and that it feels earned because of what we saw him go through, and
Right.
a large part of that is the music, I think, helping to get those emotions across.
Yeah, I would agree completely that's that it's going to be hard to top this as far as music is concerned. I know we're three episodes in, but as far as music is concerned, man, this was a great episode. So you gave that a 10 out of 10. I gave it an 8 out of 10. So final score, since I gave it a +1 bonus point for the title card, I went ahead and brought my score up to a 30 out of 40 for this episode.
Yeah, and mine would be 34 out of 40. So this is
Nice.
Definitely
Close. That's
our highest rating to date for both of us, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely our highest rated to date. And that just goes to show you, just because it's early on, and my first thought after watching those first 2 episodes was like, do we romanticize these a little bit too much? Are do we think that these are better than I remember them? Like, why? Not, like we said, not because they were bad, but there's certainly nostalgia lends to a little bit of rose-colored glasses at times. But after seeing this episode, I was like, nope. I now know why we love these episodes. It's an episode like this.
Yeah, and again, we talked about how this has the portrayal of Batman here. Again, I think really informed every version of Batman. You mentioned sort of the influence that the scenes in this maybe had on the Nolan films, or if you've played any of the Batman Arkham video games, the Scarecrow is a very big part of a couple of those games, and certainly there's a lot of elements to what this show as an individual show, and the performance by Kevin Conroy, I think, meant this is a pretty important episode as far as, I think, not just for the famous quote, but just the way Batman's portrayed, the way he's what he's able to overcome, and maybe taking a harder look at that side of seeing Batman in doubt. A lot of times, especially in sort of more modern comics, Batman can be a sort of Deus Ex Machina character.
Mm-hmm.
He's just, he's so smart and so clever and so brilliant that we sometimes don't even get to see him struggle, and to see him struggling with perhaps the most human emotion, the most relatable emotion possible, that being, self-doubt and fear of not living up to your parents or not living up to your heroes.
Right.
Again, like what we talked about earlier, everybody can live up to that, and I think this episode is very important historically for a variety of reasons.
I would agree with you. Again, maybe it was just I hadn't watched this episode a whole bunch, but then you go into it sort of with like a blank slate. But coming out of it, man, this might end up being in a top 10 if we have to put a top 10 list together. So certainly phenomenal. So with that, anything else you want to add to the episode, or anything we didn't talk about?
Not really. I just want to say again, this was great, and as you mentioned, this is one of those episodes that's going to remind you that when you're a kid, you can watch this show and just see Batman punching bad guys, and kind of having adventures and enjoy it. And then you get a little older and you realize the themes and the acting and it really makes a show that I think it's a great show, and the fact that it's aged as well as it has is really pleasantly surprising.
I'm with you. Absolutely. All right. So with that, once again, we thank you for tuning in and listening to us. We would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts. What did you think of Nothing to Fear? What were your scores on the plot, the animation, the music, the voice acting? Was there anything that we missed? Any plot holes that we missed? Anything that you thought was great about this episode that surprised you? Or maybe you completely disagree with us and think this episode is complete crap. We would love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and tweet us at DCAU Review. Go ahead and comment on our post on Facebook, facebook.com/DCAU Review. You can just search for DCAU Review at the top of your Facebook search bar. And of course, go ahead and subscribe to us on iTunes. You'll get each episode as it's uploaded, downloaded to your computer, and streaming also that way. Also streaming at dcaureview.wordpress.com. Thanks again for tuning in. Make sure you give us some feedback. Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes if you have a second. We would love that. All right, with that, that'll about wrap us up. Until next time, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.